Have you broke a snorkel gear, or maybe your reverse chain, blown a side hole in the side of your transmission, or maybe it's just time to replace it? Well, SuperATV's got you covered with our heavy-duty GDP complete transmission for the RZR 1000, and today we're going to show you how to get it installed. So let's get to it. The first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and remove both rear wheels and tires, and then the cotter pin out of your castle nut. Then we'll go ahead and remove the castle nut. We'll go ahead and remove our radius arm hardware. From the upper and lower. Go ahead and pick up on the trailing arm and remove both the upper and lower radius arm bolts. And I like to just kind of take my bolts, stick them back through the radius arms there. That way we don't lose our bushings. We'll grab our 15 millimeter. Go ahead and disconnect the caliper. Remove the bolts out of there. Pull the caliper off. We'll just flip it up onto the trailing arm, just let it hang. You're not going to hurt it. It's got the stainless steel line there. Then we'll just go ahead and wiggle our hub off. We'll set it aside. For the time being, have this radius arm, flip it down. And again, I like to stick the bolts in there so that way we don't have bushings rolling across the floor. We'll grab our trailing arm, we'll pull it out. We'll grab our axle, we'll plunge it straight in and then pull it straight out. Just like that. Go ahead and set it aside. Grab an 18 socket and an 18 wrench. We'll go ahead and disconnect our shock from the trailing arm. As well as the sway bar link. That'll be a 15 and a 15. Whenever you take your shock bolt out, just pick up on your trailing arm, give it a little bit of a wiggle. Your bolt will come out and your trailing arm will sit down just like that. Then you can let your shock hang, or you can tie it up out of the way. We're going to need to move it around, so I'm just going to let mine hang. I may have to move it around to get my primary clutch off, but that's fine. So then we're going to go ahead and grab our 8 millimeter socket, 5/16, 8 millimeter, same thing. I like a little bit of an extension, usually a 6-inch extension here. We'll go through, we'll disconnect the vent hose off of our clutch cover. Then just go around and get all these clutch cover bolts. Once all the hardware is removed, just go ahead and remove your clutch cover. We'll set it aside. And we'll grab a 10 millimeter. We'll go ahead and we'll disconnect the hose from up here off the frame. Just to get it out of the way. If you want, you can just pull it straight out, or you can leave it, kind of rotate it. You know, that way it's just not hanging in your way. It's personal preference there. Then we'll grab a 15 and get it ready to go. We're going to need it for the secondary clutch, but first we're going to want to compress it. You can use your shock tool in your factory toolkit. Sometimes I just use a pry bar, it works just as good. You'll just take your belt, and as you're spinning it, the secondary, just kind of work the belt off of there. Just make sure you keep your hands clear, because once that belt comes out of there, it's going to want to snap on you. And we'll just keep our belt facing the same way. You know, sometimes it'll wear a little weird if you don't put it on the same way. This belt looks like it's about junk anyways, but that's just a good rule of thumb there whenever you remove a belt. Then we'll grab our 15, we'll go ahead and remove the bolt out of the secondary. Just like that. Just go ahead and remove it. And we're just going to remove the bolt out of our primary clutch. pull it straight out, set it aside, and then you will need to purchase a clutch removal tool. These things are super handy. There's really no better way to get these off other than to use this. They're available at SuperATV.com. What we'll do is we'll just take it, and I like to hand thread it in there as far as possible. Make sure the threads are good, you know. Make sure thread's in there nice. And the nice thing is it's a 27 millimeter, so a lot of times just take the 1/2 inch drive impact with the 27, same as the castle nut for the axle. Stick it on there. Just pop right off. Just take it off. Sit it down, remove your tool out of it. We'll go ahead and grab our 10 millimeter again. We'll remove each of the bolts securing the inner clutch cover. Then we'll want to go ahead and remove this clamp right here. I'm going to slide this hose out. Sometimes once you get the wallering around with this tube, it'll want to come out too. If it does, it's no big deal. You'll just have to pop it back through up there on your intake. Let's go ahead and set that aside. It just gives us a little bit more room anyways. And we'll grab a hold of this inner clutch cover here. Just kind of start working it out. You'll have some wiring that you'll want to kind of slide up out of here, just like that. You can remove that too if you need to. This is just another tube that's on top of the clutch cover here. So on the passenger side, we're going to go ahead and remove our hub, our caliper, our upper and lower radius arms, and our axle. So the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and remove the air box off of this rear mount. So what I like to do is take a wrench, get it on this side right here, just kind of get it to where it's on the nut itself. Then I'll walk around to the opposite side. I'll take a 6-inch extension with my 13 millimeter and I'll get it started on the head there. Then I'll just reach around, or if you have somebody to help you, go ahead and remove it. Just like that. Obviously, if you don't have a set of long arms or anything like that, you'll probably need help. You know, it's kind of a tricky thing to do there. Then we'll just go ahead and pull our bolt out once we've got the nut off of it. Just go ahead and put the nut back on it, and I'll set it on this side of the machine. That way I know the bolt head goes that way. Just makes it easier for me. You can do it any way you want. And then we'll have a couple clamps we'll need to remove. This one right here, we'll need to go ahead and remove it. We'll just go ahead and remove this air tube. Just like that. Just kind of let it hang out of the way, and that'll be fine. Have all this wiring, you'll just kind of want to pull it out of the way a little bit. Then we'll have a clamp right here. We'll have this clamp right here. We'll want to go ahead and remove it as well. Let's get it nice and loose. And we'll go around to the opposite side, and there's going to be another clamp in that same vicinity. Just obviously it's over here. So this clamp right here, if you go right over top your header, you'll see it. Right here. We'll just go ahead, loosen it up, just like we did on that opposite side. You want to get it as loose as you can, it's just only going to help you. We can kind of take the screwdriver here and kind of wiggle that clamp back a little bit. We'll just kind of grab a hold of the air box. Kind of wiggle it around. And it'll slide back a little bit, but you'll also have to get your throttle body removed. So we'll just make sure that we have it back as far as we can get it. Then you'll have a little piece of wiring right here on your airbox. You want to make sure that you just unclip that right there. You just want to take a push pin removal tool and pry that piece of wiring off. Go ahead and slide that back in behind there. And just kind of work that piece of wiring out. Just like that. Again, we'll just kind of wiggle this intake back as far as it'll go. There it is. Once we split this mount back here, you'll see you got 3 bolts. You got 1 bolt down here, 1 right here in the middle, then 1 up top. We'll be able to take that out. But first we're going to want to support the motor from wanting to fall down. You can support the motor, a few different ways. The best way is the safe way, so whatever you find safest is the best way to do it. If you have somebody here to help you, that's obviously preferred. A lot of times we just take a socket, stick up underneath the motor, and then we let it sit on the socket, You can take a pry bar and kind of shove up underneath there to hold it and then kind of let the motor sit down. It's totally up to you. We'll just take a small socket. And this small socket, a lot of times we'll take it and put it right up underneath here, just to get right up underneath the motor. And that'll be fine to hold it. Obviously you don't want it to slide off while you got your hands in there or anything like that. So we're gonna go ahead and remove the 3 bolts. Just remove these bolts as we go. So once you got all your bolts except for 1, go ahead and shove a pry bar up underneath the transmission to hold pressure on it. And then go ahead and remove your last bolt. Now just be mindful, once you remove this pry bar out of here, this transmission is going to want to drop down, so make sure you don't have your hands in the way or anything like that. So if you watch it, there it goes, it kind of sits down a little bit there for us. So now our transmission's all the way dropped down in the back. We don't have to worry about it plopping down, damaging anything of that nature. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my 15 and my 15, so my 15 wrench, 15 socket, and we're going to do pretty much the same thing we just did, except we're going to remove the rear portion of this mount. So this will actually go through the mount, actually through the rubber portion there. So what I'm going to do is go right back through here, put my 15mm wrench onto the bolt on the mount. Once we have it on, come through here and we'll go ahead and remove our bolt. So we'll just pull this side of our plate off. We'll go over here to the opposite side. Reach up through there. Grab our plate. Remove it too. I just kind of like to keep everything together. That way we know what goes with what. So all of our small bolts we had, just go ahead and thread them back in. So we know we don't get anything confused. Makes it easier to go back together. No matter how many times you've taken one of these out, it's just always a good thing. If you sit something down, you forget where it goes, you do this, you don't have to worry about it. You know where it goes. So then we'll just go ahead and start removing all our connections. This one right here needs to be removed. We'll have a zip tie right there. Just want to go ahead and cut that off. So we'll just want to go ahead and disconnect this connection, then come right here. We'll disconnect this one as well. Just pick straight up on it. Just want to pull this harness out of the way. Just kind of flip it back. That way it's not in the way anymore. you have a factory vent line, you'll want to go ahead and move it around. We have a bellow on here because this machine has a snorkel kit. We'll just want to go ahead and remove this pin here, as well as our washer. Just go ahead and pull the shift linkage off. Just slip back on there. That way we know where it's at. We don't want to lose it. Just like that. And then what we want to do is we want to get a wrench. We want to take that nut loose right there. So we'll just want to loosen this one turn, and we'll just want to pull it out. Now we want to make sure we don't mess with these nuts at all. We want to leave them exactly how they are. That way we can slide it right back in there and tighten it back up. We don't want to make any adjustments or anything. It just takes more time and it's unnecessary. I like to try to get my air box worked out of here the best that I possibly can. Just get it kind of moved around a little bit. We got ours in a position where we can take our throttle bodies off. So what we'll do is we'll get our flathead screwdriver back out and we'll take this clamp loose right here. So once we have our clamps loose for our throttle bodies, we want to make sure that we unplug this plug right here. And then we'll just grab our throttle bodies, wiggle them loose, and we'll be able to just pull them like this. And just kind of rotate them and sit them out of the way. Just make sure you get your harness kind of pulled up. Pull up like that. And you can just take your throttle body. Just try not to hurt anything, you know, just be easy with everything. Just rotate it and kind of let it hang. Again, you know, you want to make sure none of the wires are getting pinched. You don't want anything to get damaged. Once you get that out, you can take your air box out. Kind of have to rotate it around a little bit. And that frees it up and it's wide open from here. Everything's right out there in the open. And again, you know, you got your throttle bodies and everything here. You just want to kind of get it to a point to where everything's out of your way. If you want, take this harness loose here. It'll give you a little bit more room. You can just kind of lay the throttle body down like that. Just take you a couple rags. Shove them down in there. That way no dust, dirt, debris, bugs, spiders, whatever you got going on in your shop, you don't want it in there. When it's wide open, we'll go ahead and take these two bolts loose. Then you just want to remove these two bolts. They're in the same spot on the opposite side here. This bottom one, you may need to get an extension. That way you can get in there to it. So once you take your bolts loose, you'll have this threaded plate. It'll fall out. This bolt right here has pressure on it. So what we do, we take a pry bar, put it up underneath the transmission. We'll just kind of wiggle it. So we can get our bolt out, and we'll just slowly let it off. To free up some more room, you can take this mount off. Just got two bolts in it. There's two nuts on the back side. You just want to take those two off. That'll make it a little bit easier for you. So then we're going to lower our machine down. And we're going to go inside and we're going to take the top portion of our carrier off. We're running a SuperATV carrier. If you're running a factory carrier, you're not going to have to take the top portion of it off because it's not going to be there. You just pick your transmission up, slide it out. Just going to go ahead and remove our seats. So you want to go ahead and remove all your hardware from your center console. And just go ahead and remove the center console here. We have a harness installed, so we're just going to kind of flip ours to the side, just like that. And then again, we are running a SuperATV carrier, so we're just going to take all four of our top bolts out. So once we have the upper portion of the carrier removed, we'll just want to go back to the transmission and slide the carrier and the prop all the way as far forward as we possibly can. You may have to go from front to back and kind of work it That's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna work it. We're gonna go to the back, work the prop shaft, from here kind of work the carrier a little bit, and just get it so we get that prop as far forward as we possibly can. So we got our prop shaft separated off of our output shaft on our transmission. We did have to take a pry bar and kind of smack the prop a little bit. As you can see, the splines are a little bit rusty. You know, it's a good thing. You want to spray those down with some WD-40. It'll help it kind of split a little bit better. So now we're going to go ahead and remove our transmission. We're going to grab it right here on the front output shaft and then right here, and we're just going to flip it straight up. Once we have it flipped up, we'll just rotate it out. Just like this. So we're going to be reinstalling the same transmission that we just pulled out. The reason being, it already had a GDP complete transmission in it. It's running fine, no issues, so there's no reason to replace it. So all of the installation removal process will be the same between the factory and the new SuperATV heavy duty transmission. So we're going to go ahead and get it reinstalled. Obviously you want to be careful. It is heavy. Just want to rotate it the same way that it was. Watch all your wires. Make sure nothing's getting hung up and in your way. Just take it, sit her down in here. So once you get it right there to that point, sometimes you'll just have to grab a pry bar just to help you so you don't get your hands pinched. And we'll just take a pry bar, come to this opposite side and just kind of pry the bottom of the transmission up. As you can see, it just kind of fell down into place there. So here's another part that's kind of tricky. You want to get this prop shaft started onto the splines of the output shaft on the transmission before you get too far. You just have to keep working it as far forward as you can and get it on that prop shaft, and we'll start trying to get our holes somewhat lined up here. So now we're going to go ahead and start coupling the transmission to the motor mount here. What I like to do is put a pry bar on the back side and then get a screwdriver, get the hole lined up. That way you can kind of wiggle it around. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of pick up, just as I wiggle, get everything kind of lined up here. So next we're going to go ahead and reinstall our rear mount. Just going to go right here in the frame holes. That's where we took it out of. So next we're going to take our air box, kind of just get it mocked up and slid into place here. We'll go ahead and pull our rags out of the intake. So just kind of get it slid in here a little bit, just like this. Obviously we can't attach it. It just makes it easier if you get it in there before we put our throttle bodies back on. And we'll go ahead and we'll take our mount. Remember how it goes, just like this right here. So we'll go ahead and we'll unthread our screws that we have threaded in. So we'll take one side. Kind of sit it in there like that. Take the other side. Kind of get it laid in there where it's aligned with the holes. It'll somewhat kind of sit there for you a little bit. Have to reach around and kind of line it up as you go. What I like to do is get one side lined. And you can kind of stick your hand through the center section. Then you just want to make sure that you only start these three, the three that are in a line here. Get those started and go ahead and tighten them. So next we're going to go ahead and grab our wiring harness and slide it over to the opposite side. You may just have to kind of let the throttle body hang just to make sure our wires are ran in the right location. Everything's right so far. And we're just going to take our throttle body. Make sure all wires are pushed out of the way. And start kind of sliding it into position here. Again, just make sure all your wires are out. You don't want to get anything pinched. Get it started on this side, and we're going to go over here to the opposite side. Make sure it's started. Make sure we don't see anything that we don't like. Nothing's pinched. Looks like all our wires are where they need to be. It's going to attach right there. All these plug in back here. Just double check everything. Everything looks good. Got 3 connections here. Okay, so we're good on this side. All the wiring's where it needs to be. We'll go over here. We'll take a look too. So we know that goes up there. This goes here. Just take a double check. You know, it doesn't ever hurt to look twice. This is a time where you don't want to have any issues. So if you have to go back through, it's quite a bit of work. Make sure that intake's fully seated in there. Don't want any vacuum leaks or nothing of that nature. Everything's looking good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and get my flathead screwdriver. Go ahead and fully tighten the clamp on the intake here. So now we're going to take a pry bar, put it up underneath the back of the transmission here. Press straight up. We're going to get our mount lined up with our rear mount here. The best we can. And we'll go over here to the opposite side. Get the pry bar underneath here. And press straight up on this transmission. And then reach around to the opposite side at the same time and try to get our mount lined up. This can be somewhat tricky. You just want to keep working it until you get it lined up there. And slide your bolt through. This bolt here is still loose. As you can see where we had it aligned before, that's where we're going to align it this time. We went ahead and tightened this bolt as well as this bolt. We went ahead and tightened our bolts on our motor and transmission here too, on both sides. So we'll have 1, 2, and then 3, 4 on the opposite side. Now we're going to go ahead and tighten up this rear mount. So what you're going to want to do now is go through, make sure all your wires are plugged in, make sure everything's tucked up and out of the way. Not so much on this side because you will have to move it, but on the passenger side, definitely make sure everything's out of the way, everything's cleaned up and looking good. And ours is, make sure all your hardware's tight. Make sure that whenever you take a tape measure, that from the center of this shaft right here to the center of this shaft is 10.5. I don't know if you can really, let's see if we take it up here. If you look, we're dead on, we're at 10.5 there. You want to make sure it's at 10.5. If it's not, then you have the alignment incorrect, and that can cause belt issues, it's a really bad deal. You want to ensure it's at 10.5. If you're at this point right here and it's not, you want to take your hardware loose and you want to adjust it. Hold your tape measure up here if you have somebody to work a pry bar. Once you got it at 10.5, go through, tighten everything. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and put our inner clutch cover on, put our primary and secondary on, all of our tubes, we'll get all those hooked back up, and then we'll move to the next step. So now all you're going to want to do is reattach your shift cable to your shift linkage, as well as the bracket here. Just make sure you lock that nut down, and then double check it with your shifter. Just make sure it's going in all the gears good. Then we're going to go ahead and reinstall our axles, then our radius arms, and then on this side we'll do the shock, the sway bar link, as well as the calipers on both sides as well. So before you run your transmission, you want to make sure that your drain plug is installed and your fill plug is removed. The fill plug can be accessed through the rear portion of the machine here. Just look right through, you'll see the Allen head. You'll want to go ahead and fill that up with Polaris AGL until it runs out of the hole. Once it runs out of the hole and has a decent little drip to it, you want to go ahead and put your fill plug back in. Go through, take a rag, clean everything up really nice. Make sure that you don't have any transmission fluid running out. That way it doesn't look like you have a leak or anything. Once you've done that, you're good to go. So once you've went through, reinstalled the rest of your components, made sure everything's all tight, that's how super quick and easy it is. Install SuperATV's heavy-duty GDP complete transmission on this RZR 1000. For more information on our complete transmission or any of SuperATV's great products, feel free to give us a call at 855-743-3427 or check us out online at superatv.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.